Who is like the wise? Who knows the explanation of things? A person's wisdom brightens their face and changes its hard appearance. Obey the king's command, I say, because you took an oath before God. Do not be in a hurry to leave the king's presence. Do not stand up for a bad cause, for he will do whatever he pleases, since a king's word is supreme. Who can say to him, "What are you doing?" Whoever obeys his command will come to no harm, and the wise heart will know the proper time and procedure. For there is a proper time and procedure for every matter, though a person may be weighed down by misery. Since no one knows the future, who can tell someone else what is to come? As no one has power over the wind to contain it, so no one has power over the time of their death. As no one is discharged in a time of war, so wickedness will not release those who practiced it. All this I saw as I applied my mind to everything done under the sun. There is a time when a man lords it over others to his own hurt. Then too I saw the wicked buried, those who used to come and go from the holy place and receive praise in the city where they did this. This too is meaningless. When the sentence for crime is not quickly carried out, people's hearts are filled with schemes to do wrong. Although a wicked person who commits 100 crimes may live a long time, I know that it will go better for those who fear God, who are reverent before him. Yet, because the wicked do not fear God, it will not go well with them, and their days will not lengthen like a shadow. There is something else meaningless that occurs on earth: the righteous who get what the wicked deserve, and the wicked who get what the righteous deserve. This too, I say, is meaningless. So I commend the enjoyment of life, because there is nothing better for a person under the sun than to eat and drink and be glad. Then joy will accompany them in their toil all the days of their life God has given them under the sun. When I applied my mind to know wisdom and to observe the labor that is done on earth, people getting no sleep day or night, then I saw all that God has done. No one can comprehend what goes on under the sun. Despite all their efforts to search it out, no one can discover its meaning. Even if the wise claim they know, they cannot really comprehend it.
Thank you very much, Meg. Now, the Bible uses this word wisdom. It gets mentioned quite a lot in that chapter. And wisdom tends to make us think of like people with long white beards who know everything. That's not what this writer means. You notice the very last verse of the chapter. He says, the wise claim they know, but they don't. So being wise is not knowing everything, according to this writer. But he does say in the first verse, having wisdom can basically cheer you up and help your life. So what is wisdom? It's not knowing everything. Wisdom in the Bible is someone who has learned to adapt their choices and their behavior and what matters to them. They've learned to adapt that to the way the world really is, rather than hoping that the world will be different and so trying to live for a different world they don't see. We actually had a great example in Kelly's story, which she sent me this week to read. I loved it when she said, "I didn't need to discover myself, I needed to get over myself," which was a great line. Could be a church motto. This is what she was saying, though, wasn't it? The reality was, I didn't need to find out more about me. That was in my imaginary world. Actually, what I needed, the wisdom was to say, I'm not the central character in this story, and adapt to that. That God's the one who's the ultimate reality. It sounds sort of threatening, that. I can't get it. You know, oh, you're saying I have to make myself less important if I'm going to be wise. But verse 1 says it will make you happier. So that's actually what both our testimonies said today. And this is a section about that type of wisdom, accepting the way the world truly is and learning to live there. And basically saying you can be free from the misery of wishing things that are beyond your control were different than they were. You can be free of that and find joy in being wise, in your life fitting with what's actually true. Here's the first thing he says. It should come up on the screen. Do what you can do. He gives a little talk in verse 2 and onwards about approaching kings. Now remember, kings in the ancient world had absolute authority. And he basically says, when you approach the king, you just need to accept the reality he has more power than you. So don't try and hide from him. Don't try and manipulate him. You need to respect he can do what he likes. Now this is already different. It's already different from what I call school assembly theology. Some of you sit in school assemblies professionally. And school assemblies are always about, you can change the world because you are really amazing. And I'm like, have you met my children? The writer of Ecclesiastes just says that's not true. The truth is about life, there are people who have authority over you, and you just need to accept it and get on with it. If you don't like school assembly theology, think about X Factor theology. It's a bit dated now. They don't do it anymore, but it's considered in bad taste. All these children who sat in assembly and were told they could be anything they wanted to be thought, great, that means I can win the X Factor even if I can't sing. And we had endless TV programs of people basically being publicly shamed because they'd been told wisdom is to adapt reality to you. No. Wisdom is to adapt yourself to reality. And this writer says, the truth is there will be people in life who have more power than you. You need to learn how to deal with that. You may not like it, but it's wise. He does say, though, I've lost my page. He says, though, in the next few verses, even powerful people will die eventually. So they're not as powerful as they think. So you shouldn't treat them as if they've got ultimate power. You shouldn't think, right, okay, I'll do things that are bad and wrong because you want me to, just because you're powerful. Because every powerful person has another more powerful person behind them who is God, whether they believe in him or not. And so verse 5 says, I think what verse 5 means is in the end, you have to deal with authority in front of you, but obey God above them. A wise person will see there's authority and respect that, but that also see this person claiming ultimate power, they're not above God, and so they're not going to make me disobey him. So day to day, what does that mean? Well, the writer says, the wise heart will know the proper time and procedure. He says, I love this verse, though they're weighed down by misery, in verse 6, they won't just be like letting all their misery spill out all the time, vomiting it over everybody because the people in authority are so bad. The wise person will use the right time and procedure to speak to authority. I'm going to say something here that some people will find offensive, so I apologize. Have you ever met a happy teacher? Or actually, have you ever met at the moment, a happy doctor or nurse? I'm not being unsympathetic. Well, I'm being a little bit unsympathetic. But I think the reason those jobs at the moment are so hard is because you guys are working in huge authoritative systems where often authority is really being used very badly. Well, here's some advice from Ecclesiastes. A wise person knows the time and procedure to speak up and doesn't let the misery they're feeling push them into doing unwise choices, unwise things that could get them into trouble. It is common in some of those professions, and other professions too, to just be weighed down by misery, to moan, basically, and be unhappy. And yet, my observation, standing on the outside of those things, is those institutions do say they have lots of ways of giving feedback. They ask about well-being, and they have union reps and, committees and stuff. I don't know, you know. And the wise person is able to not let their unhappiness weigh them down or mouth off to authority and get into trouble because they're so miserable, but know the proper time and process. That's where we're starting today, in this very earthy, real-life place. A situation every human being faces, how you deal with people who have power over you. Now, I know that many of you, especially maybe medics and teachers, will be saying, oh yes, there's a process, but you use it and it doesn't make any difference. Nobody listens. Oh yes, the writer of wisdom knows that too. Look at verses 7 and 8. He says, verse 8, for example, as no one has power over the wind to contain it, so no one has power over the time of their death. As no one is discharged in time of war, so wickedness will not release those who practice it. He's basically saying, I know that you don't feel like you can make any impact and then you die. And I know that the people above you do bad things and they just keep on doing bad things. I know that. He's not saying use the proper process and you'll get the change you want. In fact, he says the opposite's usually true. Everyone dies in the end, and many people die without seeing wicked people around them change at all. But the thing he's saying is, you don't have to take it on yourself to change the world. That's not where joy and freedom is, in knowing you've done some amazing thing that's changed the world for everybody. He actually says trying to be that world-changing person is a route to misery and madness. He's said that throughout the book. Trying to make an impact on the world through wisdom or through pleasure or through money, it's impossible. It's a vapor. It doesn't make any lasting difference. He knows that. He just wants to free you and say, don't worry, it's not your job to impact the world. You can't tell the future. You'll die in the end. Loads of wicked people will never learn not to be wicked. That's it. You don't have to solve that problem. Now, I realize that is shocking news to any watcher of TV dramas, with which the plot is always like plucky outsider changes the world. It's interesting, recently we were watching this one, it came up on the screen, the drama about the people trying to take on the post office, which is a terrible scandal in our public life at the moment, that lots of people running post offices were accused of crimes and found guilty of crimes they hadn't committed. And the shape of the drama was this man fought the post office, and over years he got them to admit that they were wrong. But I thought it was very realistic, because the end of the last episode was, he went back down into his room, sat down at his computer and said, it's not solved yet. There's still more to do. And that's the reality of life. Even the best things we do, the rightest things we do, we don't solve the problem of evil. Now, he is still saying it's still wise to do the right thing, to use the proper time and procedure, like these guys did. Who knows what you'll achieve? But listen, many people died. Even in that story, many people have died before right was done. Many people who are involved still don't think right was done. And the man at the center of it, Alan Bates, has said he's not really comforted yet by the difference they did make, because it feels like you're never finished fighting what's wrong. So I'm sorry today I'm not going to be able to teach you the right way to deal with authority that means you will make good change all the time, because you're a finite being that's above your pay grade. It's not something you're able to do. But in a way, I'm not sorry to say that, because while I'm sure many people are anxious and depressed because they have a medical problem that needs medical help, I'm sure one of the reasons the world is so depressing and anxiety-inducing is because we've all been constantly told we ought to be making an amazing difference in the world, and we feel totally overwhelmed and unable to do it, and we don't know what to do. And this writer of this ancient book of wisdom says that's true. Wisdom is knowing what you can do and doing it. Understanding there are people who are authority over you. You won't solve their wickedness, but there is a place and procedure that you can be involved in, and that's what you should do because it's the right thing to do. You might be thinking, oh, yeah, nice advice, particularly if you're a teacher or a medic, sorry about that. But also thinking, how could I become that person? who's satisfied with just doing what I can do. Well, you're going to be even more shocked with what he says next. The next thing he says is this: enjoy life. He says once you've done what you're able to do, you can let it go and enjoy life. Verse 14. Look at verse 14. I think it's really shocking. He says, there's something else meaningless that occurs on the earth. The righteous who get what the wicked deserve, and the wicked who get what the righteous deserve. This too, I say, is meaningless. Do you see what he's saying? I've observed that good people get what bad people should get, and bad people get what good people should get. And so he begins the next verse, so I commend. And you think what he's going to say is, so I commend setting up a political campaign, fighting against injustice, going on a march, launching a guerrilla warfare group against people in authority. He could say any of those things. He says, given that the world is so messed up and wicked people get good things and good people get wicked things, I commend the enjoyment of life. Because there is nothing better for a person under the sun than to eat and drink and be glad. Joy will accompany their hard work even, he says, if they focus what's enjoyable about life. And, we'll come to this in a minute, they view life as a gift that God has given them. It does sound a bit bad. It doesn't sound like the type of thing you're supposed to hear in church. I notice justice never gets done, so I gave the advice you should just enjoy life anyway. But let's be clear, he's talking about when you have already done what you can do in the proper time and with the proper process. And you realize I'm not in control of the outcome. I can't make all the change I'd like to see. He says, okay, if you've reached that point, even though injustice still continues in the world, I recommend that you crack open a beer, have time with friends, enjoy the days that you have, if you've done what you can do. Now, you do occasionally meet people who've really got this. In the modern world, I think it's rare. So I commonly meet people who are constantly stressed and driven to anxiety, feeling like they are never finished the things that they can do. Always active. And you also meet people who sort of self-medicate with endless box set watching or food or alcohol or whatever because life is so stressful, it's just like they just check out, give up. But you do occasionally meet someone who is at ease with life and really enjoys what is in front of them right now, even who's content in work that might be stressful or boring, but they're able to find that contentment even though they know there's injustice in the world and they're committed to fighting that injustice and doing whatever way they can. You occasionally meet that person. Someone who's able to say, I'm able to do what I can do and also enjoy what I have. One of the marches, many marches that's happening around the country at the moment, I walked past a few weeks ago. I'm not making any political comment. But I heard someone say, or they had it on a flag or on a sign, how can you sleep at night when children are dying? That's a big question. Good question. And there are people who can't sleep at night, for whom all the problems in the world that cause them great anxiety they can't solve stop them sleeping. There are many more of us, I guess, who swing between feeling really worried and then try to feel better by ignoring it for a while. You sort of swing, one then the other. The writer says this, you can look around and see the pattern that justice has never served. You can look squarely at that, and you can still know that you've done what you're supposed to do. And be free, therefore, to enjoy God's gifts, good things you have today that come from God. We've heard today, haven't we, stories of some people looking to find that type of contentment elsewhere and saying they have found it through Jesus. Now, we've had one step already, the first thing he said in our passage. You need to accept your limitations. If you believe you are meant to change the world, every day you don't manage to change the world is another very stressful day. If you believe you are a creature with limitations, you're already giving yourself some space to release, to be free. But that's not just it, because of this last thing that he says. He says this. It should come up on the screen. Except you aren't God, but you can know him. Verse 11. When the sentence for a crime is not quickly carried out, people's hearts are filled with schemes to do wrong. See what he's saying there? When something bad happens, and no one is punished for it when they should be, everything goes wrong. People start to plan to do evil things. He's saying this is what happens when we feel we have to solve everything. When a world confronts us with injustice, we start planning to do things ourselves which are bad. There are lots of Hollywood movies that is the plot. Revenge thrillers. They very rarely are like, someone did something bad to me and I did something bad back to them, the end. No, what happens? Something did something bad to me. I'm going to take revenge. But the revenge I took was so completely crazy and out of hand that it provoked them to do something bad back to me, and they did something bad back to me, and then I did something bad back to them. It all got totally out of hand. That's what he's saying here. When punishment isn't given correctly and we think we ought to be in control of the world, we end up doing bad things. He says you can resist that if you really believe the wicked person, even the person who seems to get away with it, is accountable to God. He says, I get it, I see it. It's better in the end to have had reverence for God, even though it looks like wicked people have got away with it. Now, he uses this phrase, we've talked about it a lot as we looked at Ecclesiastes, this little phrase, to fear God. It doesn't mean to be scared of God. It says it means to have God in his right place. It means to believe that God is there, to respect him and know him well enough to think he'll do what's right in the end. So that means I can do what I should do, and I can leave it with him and enjoy life. Not through ignoring what's wrong, but having someone to leave it with. If you've ever had little children, they do this a lot. Your children are playing outside together. One of them does something the other one doesn't like. They're furious about it. They come in and they say, Daddy, blah, blah, blah. They can't even get the words out. They're so angry this has happened to them. You give them a hug. Say, okay, I'll sort it out. Leave it with me. 2 minutes later, they're back playing with their Lego. And it's because you've done a good job as a parent to say, yeah, you can leave it with me. It's not that it didn't happen. You can leave it with me. They're like, great, good. Now I can enjoy life. I've done what I can do. I guess you might be thinking, though, what possible reason could there be, given everything that's happened in the world, to trust God with all that? Particularly if you have been a victim of injustice. A crime's happened to you that's never been punished. What possible reason could there be to leave that with God? Well, here is what we are telling you today, that the God who made us and loves us became a human being, Jesus Christ. And he walked around and experienced all the pains and griefs that we know. An awesome act of humility and his kindness and grace and love for us. And not only that, he died himself to take all of the wrong things we have done that separate us from God. So God himself suffered with us and for us. And to prove to us he can deal with it, whatever it is, he beat death. He actually died and came back to life. And that is the one who's saying, trust me with it. He's saying, fear and be reverent to me. And if you're willing to do that, to hand your life into his care, he'll teach you, as you submit to him, that you aren't God. You can only do what you can do. He says, I'll teach you, as you trust me and know me as this God who's like that, to leave things after you've done what you can and enjoy my good gifts. Listen, he says, I know you're appalled by injustice in the world. So am I, and someday I will judge it fairly, I promise. How am I supposed to trust that? Well, he says, I became a person and died a horrible death to take your punishment, to convince you at my own cost I am committed to justice. So leave it with me. Do what you can do. Enjoy life. That is the offer the Christian faith makes, which Kelly and Nithya have chosen to take. The end of a life thinking that I am God, and the start of a new life of actually knowing God. And through Jesus Christ, that life, where he teaches us to live like this, slowly but surely, that life is on offer to every single person who would like to take it. Let's pray. Just take a few minutes of quiet to reflect on what we've heard. Although a wicked person who commits 100 crimes may live a long time, I know that it will go better with those who fear God, who are reverent before him. Lord, it seems like a big ask to trust you with all the injustice in the world. But thank you for sending Jesus so that we can know you're trustworthy. And I just pray for anybody here today carrying heavily the weight of injustice, either as it unfolds in the world or as it's being perpetrated on them. Please will they know you are big enough. Please will they be free to do what they can do and enjoy life. And I pray for Kelly and Nithya. Thank you for this path they have embarked on, of saying to you, yes, because of Jesus, we think you are trustworthy. We pray you will give them that deep joy and safety as they navigate whatever storms life throws at them. Pray in Jesus' name. Amen.